welcome to Budget Arcade, a free-to-play gaming podcast to help you navigate through the growing realm of free-to-play games. This is the side of the podcast that we do on the off weeks, and we're just going to change the format. Tentatively, I'm going to call it The Topic, and we're going to, each week, every other 2 weeks, we're going to discuss a piece of news, debate different games, and things like that. My name's Jeff. With me is...
Now, Mark.
That's Mark, and
Yeah.
he's here.
I am here.
Yeah, he made it. So, did you have something to say?
No. I'm going with the flow. I'm good.
Well, I didn't ask you. And I haven't listened to it yet. I've been tempted to just leave it as a surprise for myself. You recorded a song. Should I just insert it here now?
Do it. It's awfully majestic.
Awful majestic. Well, if you guys will, I'm going to take a brief break. You're going to listen to Mark's new hit single, and I'm going to listen to it while you listen to it, and I'm going to give you my reaction when we come back.
Ooh, I can't get over this. It was so weird. Oh, out of nowhere, they were like 4'2", big eyes, skinny fingers. So let's break this down real quick. Sitting alone in my living room one night, Netflix and chilling on the couch is where I sit. I saw it from the window, a light in the sky so bright. I shielded my eyes because my retinas hurt. I audibly gasped at the sight. Dropped my bowl of cereal. I looked at the dog, he looked at me. Said, "Bro, what are you doing? Aliens aren't real." I looked back out that window, they were gone. In a flash. Am I dreaming? Neil deGrasse Tyson explained. Unidentified flying objects. Unidentified flying objects. We all know someone who had that experience. They got abducted, probed, it was so mysterious. Little green dude's too rude, I didn't even get dinner first. Now I gotta explain why I sympathize with that guy from Independence Day. I wish I was Ellen Ripley, punch those ETs in the face, Will Smith. Instead I'm just a guy rapping a song about an alien kiss. Unidentified flying objects. Unidentified flying objects. Now here's the third verse where I tell you Martians don't exist. But by now I'm sure you know better. That's a big negative slap on the wrist. They are real. They don't come in peace. I'm Amy Adams and a rival, holding up my whiteboard just looking for their alphabet. Instead, I got shooked, dropped my cornflakes, strapped to a chair and examined my prostate. Unidentified flying objects. Unidentified flying objects. Mulder was right. E.T. phoned home.
So, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Oh, God, it's shrill. What am I hearing, Mark?
So this is the new single, promptly titled UFOs. And, it was inspiration hit me one day when I was sitting on the toilet. And, I got to thinking about what is all these unidentified flying objects. What are they? Where'd they come from? And to be honest with you, it's a personal tale. And,
I could tell. So I have, what? Excuse me. I have a question. What made you think anyone wanted this?
Because we're not alone out there, Jeff. Okay. They are among us. And I know somebody listening to the podcast right now has had a similar experience. And I want to connect with our listeners. And I feel that this was a intimate tale that can bring us all closer, and we can have a discussion about these experiences.
Yeah. So the fact that you even think anyone has continued to listen is amazing in its own right. But let's get into our topics. We've got 2 topics. One's going to be pretty brief. I'm recording this right after watching the Xbox showcase where they showed off some gameplay. Mark did not watch it, so I'm just going to explain to him as a PS4 fan why the PlayStation is in so much trouble. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So it's really not, but, I got to do something to liven it up, fanboy it a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So the Xbox showcase started today, which is Thursday at 1 o'clock, I think. Noon. And the first thing they show, which was not a surprise to anyone, was Halo Infinite. They showed some campaign. It looks pretty good, but it looks like Halo. It didn't do anything to excite me beyond, hey, a new Halo. They didn't show us any multiplayer modes. They didn't even hint at it. They just wanted to show you what the game looked like and how it ran on Xbox One X. Fine. So one thing that happens is right after this, Phil Spencer pops up, who, if you don't know, is the head of Xbox. And he says, everything you see here today will be launching and available on Xbox Game Pass. This presentation added tons of value to an already great deal that Game Pass is. And they showed a bunch of games, some that I thought were great. Specifically, the new Destiny 2 big content piece that normally costs $60 or whatever, maybe $30, I don't know, is going to be launching on Game Pass along with all the previous content. So if you've never played Destiny 2, you can jump in with everything with just your Game Pass subscription. They showed State of Decay 3, which State of Decay 2 is State of Decay 2 is absolutely awful. It's real bad. But hey, they showed the one that they didn't really show much of, but the one I'm kind of the most intrigued by is the new RPG by Obsidian Games, who, if you don't know, made Pillars of Eternity, which is like a old school Baldur's Gate game. Let me remember what they called that game. Obsidian.
So it's a game by Bethesda?
No, Obsidian.
Oh, Obsidian. Okay.
So they made Pillars of Eternity, which is similar to those Baldur's Gate games, but their new game is called Avowed, and it looks like it's going to be Skyrim. Like they're really pushing a Skyrim vibe. We didn't see a lot, but it could be really cool. And the fact that it's launching on Game Pass means I'm going to get to check it out. They showed a handful of indie games. They showed if you were an Xbox fan and you played the original Psychonauts, they showed Psychonauts 2, which was kind of entertaining because Jack Black was singing the song as the gameplay was being shown. And if you like Tenacious D or Jack Black, that was pretty nice. But largely, I think it was a really good presentation. It lets you know that if you get Game Pass, you're going to be getting a constant stream of brand new content. They showed a lot of things that are going to be launch day titles. One thing they did not say is whether Halo would be launch day, and I don't think it will at this point, because all they could show us was the past gameplay. But they did say your older games are going to be optimized, which again kind of shows they do have a commitment to backwards compatibility, which is, to me, the huge thing that PS5 is going to be missing, especially as games are now distributed digitally. I really don't see why going forward I wouldn't be able to bring my games with me, and with Xbox, it looks like I'm going to be able to do that, and my digital library will be intact.
It was Halo Infinite, right? That's the new.
That's the new Halo,
right?
Yeah.
Well, so that's the pretty much the only game that I saw any any type of thing for any video from this press con or
yeah, and it looks like Halo.
Yeah.
Like they didn't do anything that made me. I hated Halo 5's campaign. It was so boring, and I don't really play games like Halo for the campaign. And I think a lot of people are with me. There are people who definitely love the campaign and the lore. They've got a rich lore and a confusing lore in Halo. But I wanted to see if they were going to do something new with the multiplayer. The campaign, they did say, is going to be more of an open world, which will lead us into our main topic. Is Mark and I will be discussing the benefits of open world versus a more linear style of gameplay. And this was your idea, Mark, so why don't you get us started?
Well, I mean, that's a good segue, mainly because Halo has always been a very linear title where you're given an objective and the level that you're in isn't... It's not... Have you ever played Uncharted? The Uncharted games?
I played the first one.
Okay. So, Uncharted is like it's the most linear game that I can think of, just off the top of my head. It's simply because it's strictly story driven. It's, hey, you gotta go down this path, you can't deviate from the path, and you're trying to get to the objective. And you can do certain things along the way, like get into a shootout with somebody, or, climb a mountain, or there's, puzzles to do along the way. But yeah, I thought this was a good topic, simply because there's a lot of games out right now, that have just come out or have come out in the past couple months that have seemed to kind of pit that debate. They've put that debate on what's the word I was looking for? I just had it.
Blast.
Right.
Put it on blast.
Well,
that's what the kids are saying.
Yeah, no, that's very hip of you.
Well, thank you.
So The Last of Us 2. That game came out in the past, month and a half. And I just actually got done playing it. And that's kind of what got this topic in my head, was that is a very almost completely story-driven title. And it's developed by Naughty Dog, who also developed the Uncharted games. So that's kind of their MO of games. But, and then I've also started playing just recently a game that just came out for the PlayStation, called Ghost of Tsushima. And, that is a open world, Japanese, what would you call it? RPG type game. And,
now, my understanding, it was kind of in the vein of like your Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Origins style of game.
Yeah, no, right. It's a very epic scale story about revenge and the samurai, and you're trying to you're going against the Mongolian army, and it's a very beautiful game. It looks great. I've just only started diving into it, so I can't really speak to the total review of the game, but they're very different games. The Last of Us 2 and this game, Ghost of Tsushima. But that got me thinking, what makes a game good to you? Is it the story driven aspect, or is it the open world? Let me interact with everything. Let me go wherever I want, do anything that I want, and then get around to the goal of the game when I want to.
Yeah. So that's a good question, and it depends on the design of the game. So I'm going to point out a series to me that moved from something very linear to an open world, and it actually made the game worse, in my opinion. A lot of people may disagree with me, But the Burnout series was best when it was Burnout 3, Burnout Revenge, where you had set courses and that was it. You did your set courses, you ran people, the races were fun, and since they were so streamlined, you were able to recover from mistakes easier, and it just had a great arcadey feel. And then they made Burnout Paradise, which is an open world game, but still using these physics and this game design that was built around a more linear structure. And it was fun, and I had a lot of fun playing it, but to me, Burnout's best in those tighter, sort of structure. Now, there's no story in Burnout, so I would almost ask you then, I haven't played these games, but with Last of Us, could you pull that story off and be an open world game?
So that's a good question too, because The Last of Us 2 actually kind of dabbles in that for a very brief period of time. Towards the beginning of the game, you and another NPC head off to the ruins of Seattle to complete an objective, and you're given a map. Once you get to downtown Seattle, where all the buildings are ruined, it's pretty much open world in that aspect. You're given a map, and then you're given free reign to go wherever you want on the map. Now, the map's not large. It's, kind of like a couple city blocks. But you're on the back of a horse. You can get on and get off the horse. You can go in and out of, buildings, shops, anything like that. And, I was kind of disappointed when that was like a 2-hour, 3-hour snippet of gameplay where you were able to explore that open world feel and still be engulfed by this story that the developer had spent so much time crafting and being very meticulous with how you interacted with the environment. But that was only 2-hour gameplay. It was this snippet, and I didn't understand why they abandoned that idea for this game, is because it would have completely added so much dimension to what the game actually is. And the game, by all admission by the developer and the creator and the writer of the story, it was crafted to make you feel a certain way. It's very, hey, it's a story of revenge. It's the whole game is you're trying to get revenge for an atrocity that was done to somebody you love. And the game's long. I was very surprised by how long Last of Us 2 was. Probably about 30 hours of gameplay. And
wow.
Yeah, that's a long game for something that's completely story driven and
right.
and linear. But I think had Naughty Dog kept the open world aspect, or at least the opener world aspects for The Last of Us 2, it would have added so much dynamic and dimension to how deep the story went. It's because it's very linear along every step of the way. You can go in and out of like a couple individual buildings in every level, but you're still pushed in one direction. And,
right.
And to me, it would have been, honestly, it probably would have changed the way game stories are told had Naughty Dog just simply kept the same gameplay that it established very early on in the game with the story completely throughout. And I don't understand why they didn't.
Yeah. Well, and their MO has been that more structured campaign, right? They like having the big set pieces, and in order to kind of make sure your players go through those set pieces in the way you want them to, you do need to narrow their path. Do you have a game that you think has done it both of these well, like done an open world and done a compelling story. I have one in mind, but I wanted to see if you could think of one.
That's a good question. A recent game that comes to mind is probably, I would say Breath of the Wild probably did a really good job of transitioning from a completely linear type game to completely open world, epic scale, but also have a meaningful story behind it. I wasn't prepared to answer that question, so.
Well, deal with it. So for me, what I think of is because, frankly, the Grand Theft Auto games to me have never had a particularly compelling story. It has always sort of harped more on shock value and humor than actually trying to be compelling. But Rockstar has made a game called Red Dead Redemption, which does have a fantastic story and is open world, but it doesn't really have. When I think of like the memorable moments of those games, nothing compares to the memorable moments of something that is made to be a piece of cinematic gameplay that like Naughty Dog would make.
Right.
So I do think you could produce a great story in an open world game, but I think when you really want to hit beats and have a story told at a particular pace and cadence, you're going to opt for that more linear experience. And sometimes for me, I want a linear experience because I'll pick up. So Grand Theft Auto 4 is a good example where I could just go straight to mission, but half the time I'm getting calls to take some girl out to play darts. And I don't want to do that, and there's just so much going on in one huge open world that I feel like it's too much. And on occasion, I would like to just have something more straightforward it's kind of like the Arkham games, right? The first Arkham game was very much a more linear game.
Right.
And I really liked that. I think it told a pretty good story. And then you got into the more open world games and they were good. But to me, I still kind of I think there's places for both. And because if you have a smaller world, you can be more intentional with your mechanics and the way you want people to approach things. When you have an open world, you pretty much are setting it up where someone's going to find a way around what you've tried to build for them to do.
Sure. I think...
Which is maybe a good thing, but if you want them to go a particular way, you kind of have to have that linear design.
Well, and I think the Arkham series is a good example, is because over the span of 3 games, they went from linear. Your entire story takes place in one singular building, and then by the 3rd game, while still a very good game, they had transitioned to a more open world aspect where you're able to drive the Batmobile and you're able to go get different missions from different NPC in the game. And so the one game that I remember thinking, holy crap, this game has completely turned everything on its head, and this will be a completely new way of playing games for every game going forward. And that was Fallout 3.
Okay.
And, did you play
that? Now,
you
talk about a huge difference between 2 and 3.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, like, so for those that don't know, Fallout 1 and 2 were these isometric, really crummy looking CRPGs that were turn-based and sluggish. And I think obviously some people really enjoyed them, but then, as I'm sure you're going to point out, Fallout 3 comes out and it's first-person open world RPG, first-person shooter style.
Yeah. Well, and so what really, blew my mind about Fallout 3 was the scale of the map and the things you could discover along the way. There was just something about, trekking across this vast world and discovering, landmarks, that were familiar to you. And, you're like, holy crap, this is whatever monument or whatever. And I thought Bethesda did a really great job of introducing that open world, and that really paved the way, in my opinion, for a lot of other developers to take their cues and say, wow, you did a really great job with that, but let me improve it. Let me start introducing, different mini games along the way, and, let's throw all these different, side quests at you, and cause it's been a very long time since I played Fallout 3, but I don't remember there being just a ton of side quests. I remember I remember towards the end of the game, you have this mutant companion who has this laser minigun, and he's pretty much your tank, and, you're just going around and killing everybody. But Fallout 3, in my opinion, is the game that really set the tone for open world gaming going forward for the past, 12 years, 13 years?
Yeah, I still think GTA sort of drives the open world, because they always tend to be the one that people flip out about the most when it comes out. Now, I think those days may have passed as they focus more on online. I've been a fan of the Assassin's Creed games, specifically 2, and then a couple of the Ezio ones. But
if we're talking about Assassin's Creed games, let me tell you, Odyssey. That's my.
Yeah.
Beep. Edit it out. But that game is such underrated. It just to me, it flew under the radar in this console generation, simply because I think maybe the Assassin's Creed games were just a certain way for such a long period of time. And
now, did you play Origin?
I did. And Origins kind of explored a little bit of what Odyssey completely engulfs.
Okay.
They kind of threw the RPG element at you a little bit in Origins, and a bigger map. It wasn't quite the scale that Odyssey is, but Odyssey just it brings everything that is great about an open world game, and it gives it to you in the most beautiful package that you could imagine. It's got great gameplay. The story is one of the better stories of an open world game that I've played. The RPG elements are great. It's got endless weapon customization options. It's I played it for 93 hours before I was kind of just done with everything. And that to me is the mark of a great open world game, is when you can get engulfed in everything other than the story that the game has to offer. But that was just my side rant.
No, I've been meaning to pick it up. It's been on sale a few times, but I just and this kind of goes into my point, sort of the large scale epicness of it is do I really want to commit? Because I'm sure it's great, but if I downloaded a 10-hour indie game or something like that, it'd be a little more digestible as a straightforward game. So,
well, yeah, I mean, you have to be in the mood for a game of that scale,
right?
You can't just pick it up and be like, oh, I'm just going to play this for 7 hours and then I'm going to do something else. It's because the game doesn't allow that. The game is meant to completely engulf your time by just throwing everything at you that you can think of. And, I saw something on Twitter the other day about what the best Assassin's Creed protagonist was across all of the Assassin's.
Ezio.
But Odyssey's protagonist, her name, it's a female. Well, you can play as a female or a male. But I've recently read that Ubisoft originally wanted, or the director of the game originally wanted the protagonist to be the female Cassandra.
And I hear that her voice acting is a lot better than the voice acting of the male counterpart, from my understanding of the reviews I've seen.
Yeah, I don't know, because I never, now, in game, if like, say you pick Cassandra to play as her, you interact with your male counterpart that you had the option of choosing from the beginning, as a non-playable character. But, Ubisoft originally wanted Cassandra to be the only protagonist, not have that option. And I guess Ubisoft was like, hey, women don't sell in video games. Let's give options. And,
now they want options. We could go down a sidetrack, but I mean, why not have options in the last Assassin's Creed game?
Right.
The last however many. But, whatever, let's not do that, I guess. But now they want options. Now they understand representation when,
Well, if you look at it, that game, Odyssey, was released in 2018. And,
right.
There's been a ton of games since then that have only had female protagonists, and they've been in the conversation for Game of the Year. They've sold millions of copies.
Your Horizon Zero Dawns.
Right. Yeah. Your Last of Us, and, there was that game, not quite open world, what was it, Control?
Yeah.
That game,
and
that game was good.
That proves the point, is like, it doesn't, just make a great game, and people are going to buy it, and okay. But that's its own conversation.
So let me ask you this. Is there something about a linear title that draws you in more, other than, hey, it's usually a lot quicker, I don't have to spend, 50 hours on it? Is there something that you particularly like about a linear title that doesn't fully represent itself in an open world aspect?
As far as like a modern games perspective, maybe not. Like Spider-Man would have to be open world,
right.
Or and if the new Assassin's Creed, like, I'd feel restricted if I played the new Destiny and it wasn't open world.
Right.
Now, the counterpart to that is I like playing retro styled platformers. Think your Shovel Knights, Messenger, things like that, where they are not necessarily open world. You have a very set of challenges that you have to go through to finish the game, and being able to see something that's so precisely designed, it shows a little more of what the creators want you to do and things like that. So there are times, but it's mostly manifests itself in those retro style games that I like to play, having that kind of more linear style, having a level from A to B to Z to beat is appealing to me because it's different, right?
Right.
And that's okay. Like, there's no one answer, like open world forever or linear forever. It's good that there's differences. It's good that I can play a game that I can sink 100 hours into exploring, and it's good to have an 8-hour story-driven game that at the end of it, I feel like I've watched a great movie or been a part of something.
Yeah, I think because you're a big Nintendo guy, I think Nintendo does that quite well, where their games, like, as far as I know, now correct me if I'm wrong, but Breath of the Wild is their only true open world first party title, correct?
Someone might prove me wrong, but I think that's true. Now, I gotta say, I'm not a big Nintendo guy. I have a Switch because it's a wonderful console, and it's portable and hooks to my TV. I tend to really like their portable consoles, but I really am not, like, I didn't own a GameCube. I have a Wii U, but it's mostly my son's. I've never really played it that much, so And most of the first party titles I don't get out of bed for.
Yeah.
But I like having those indie titles on the go on the Switch. And the Switch has been a great indie thing. But yeah, I think that it is the first real open world. And I think one of the things that's funny about that game, and we'll get close to closing here, but is that people are like, oh my gosh, look what this game has done. It's so different and new. And what a fresh take on open world. And I'm playing it and I'm like, yeah, maybe if you've only played Nintendo games, this feels new to you. But I've played games like this before, you know?
Right.
I've played Skyrim where you find a secret mission in a hole in the wall and you go ahead.
But have you played an open world title with Link as your protagonist? No.
Of course not.
No.
But I'm not that attached to Link as some other people are.
No, true, but it's something to be said about a video game character that's so legendary.
Those design choices are not new. They're wrapped in a very pretty bow that everyone is familiar with and feels comfortable with. And I am by no means saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying that it's not this innovative masterpiece that everyone is like, oh my gosh. I think a lot of it is that Link aesthetic that people really are like, oh, this is great. Whereas if you've played, an Assassin's Creed game or Skyrim or whatever, you've played open world games where you can easily get lost in what tasks you're supposed to do. One thing I will say that they do better than a lot of these open world games is they don't, Zelda specifically Breath of the Wild doesn't hold your hand. It really encourages you to kind of go out and explore in a very free way. There's not a lot of waypoints. And so discovery is a big part of that. And I think they do that very well, but it didn't blow me away. Ooh. It's like I played this before and that's okay.
We should have led with that because I have a lot of thoughts. I was not prepared for you to poo-poo on the Breath of the Wild.
I did not poo-poo it. I just said it's been done before, right? So we'll table this, all right? And we'll talk about the merits of Zelda Breath of the Wild maybe in 2 weeks, unless something else happens that we really want to discuss, because I have a lot to say about it too.
Ooh, we should, yeah. No,
the controls aren't great, but we'll get into that.
The tease. No, so yeah, I'll end with there is something to be said with a great linear game. I am a very big single player game guy. I don't dive a ton into multiplayer multiplayer games. I'm not a big, Call of Duty guy, or, like Warzone or anything like that. And, and that's fine. People love those types of games. And I like the story driven aspect. And so something that I've been drawn to in the past, probably just 10 years or so, is an open world type game that tells a great story. And I think what we're seeing more and more of now, and especially going into this future generation with the PS5 and the Xbox X, One X,
Series X.
Yeah, Series X. And is more developers telling great stories in a world where you're not pointed to the goal. You're not told you have to go here. And, once you get here, then the next part of the story presents itself. And I think that's an evolution in gaming. That's a worthwhile evolution in gaming. I'm not saying that linear games should completely go away. It's because you can tell a great story in a 7-hour game and it make a lasting impact. But I just think that for me, open world games present so much more to a certain gamer style than a regular, A to B, title can. And I just don't, I don't see how gaming doesn't continue to evolve in that direction.
All right. Well, let us know what you think. You can hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at Budget Arcade. You can go to our website, www.budgetarcade.com. You can also interact with us on Facebook, facebook.com/Budget Arcade. In most of these locations, you will find a link to our Discord server where we are constantly chatting about all things. I'm sure that I'm going to inflame some sort of yelling. Last time you got yelled at, Mark.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
For some of your words. Now,
very much.
Everyone's going to think I hate Zelda Breath of the Wild, and they can yell at me over in Discord.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
So, if you've had a similar experience with UFOs, don't feel that you're alone. Contact me, contact Jeff. We will talk to you about it.
I will not. Contact Mark.
It's not very
I heard
nice.
you like this on Twitter or whatever. I can't remember.
That is my @ I heard you liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look forward to speaking with you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all you conspiracy theorists, go hit up Mark. You can also find me on Twitter. Mine is @ Film Soliloquy, which is the name of my other podcast. And I'll be sure to hear how much you think I'm an idiot for what I think of Breath of the Wild. But I think next week we're going to name next week's episode is Zelda Breath of the Wild good ? And I think that will really lure in a lot of people ready to choke someone. So we'll see you next time. This is Budget Arcade.
Imagineville Podcast Network.